right, everyone. I'm here with Kevin Hoover. Hey, Kevin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing wonderful.
Now, Kevin is a life and business coach, but you do work with a lot of realtors. And yes, and you've
I
noticed
do.
that they've all been tired.
Yeah, everyone's exhausted.
Yes. So here's some things, and we were talking, and it's like I thought you made some really good points of helping us understand why we're tired and kind of what happened in this. So why don't you take the torch here?
I'll jump in. Yeah. Thanks for that. I work with a lot of real estate brokers, team leaders, franchise owners, and agents. And as we all know, the market is crazy. It's insane. If you're working buyers or sellers, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Submitting 12 offers before you get one accepted, or sifting through 42 offers
Right.
if you're on the selling side. It can get to be so much.
Right.
So I really have worked with my clients and given advice out and as my talks and everything. What can we do? How
Yeah.
do we, how do we mitigate the exhaustion? How do we,
Right.
manage our schedules better? How do
And how
we
did we
prepare
get
our
here?
clients?
Yeah.
Yeah, and how do we get here? And so,
How do we get
so
out of it?
yeah. Well, I think that's what everyone's asking is
Yeah.
when are things going back to normal, whatever that means.
Right.
So I'll give you a couple of things that really have helped me in my life and business and have helped my clients. And the first thing that I really want to talk about is control.
Hmm.
A lot of us spend a lot of behind the scenes energy. It can be emotional energy. Some call it, subconscious energy, whatever it is. We spend a ton of energy trying to control things that we just don't control, like the
Mm.
market.
Mm.
You can't control the market.
No.
So we spend a ton of energy just trying, and we want to keep the same schedule, and we're just white knuckling it through the whole thing. And so I really want you to look at that in your life, in your business life, as you're looking around the landscape, really getting honest with yourself. What do I control and what do I not control?
Right.
If you submit the best offer for your buyer and it's the best offer, you don't control whether it's accepted or not.
Right.
And so we spend a ton of energy on ownership of the outcome.
Hmm.
And that's what can be exhausting. It really can. So what you want to really tell your buyers is, hey, this is an insane market. So what we want to do is put our best foot forward from
Yeah.
the get.
Right.
And if we do that, whether we get it or don't, we've done all we can do. So we move on.
We just got to let it go.
Got to let it go.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the
um,
hardest part though, because because especially as like somebody who was a listing agent, very heavy listing agent, and it's just like we felt like we did control the market, right? Because we had
yeah.
the inventory. And so now it's like, wait a minute, these
Wait a
tables are
minute. Yeah.
turned. This sucks.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. And I think that's to the point. It's what do you control? When that shift obviously the earlier you recognize that shift in market, the earlier you can adjust the things you need to adjust. But really about what is it that you control and being honest with yourself about that, that'll mitigate a ton
Nice.
of that. And then your process and your systems, you've got to analyze those.
Yes.
What was working when the sellers were ruling the world,
Hmm.
uh, and the sellers agents were ruling the world. What was working then doesn't necessarily work now, meaning your process probably needs to adjust or change completely depending
It
on.
just takes so much longer as representing a buyer than a
Yeah,
seller. So it's like, yeah, for us, it's like we were just like, turning, and there's like efficiencies there that don't exist
yeah,
when you have a couple of buyers,
yeah, yeah. Or when you're having to take a buyer out instead of, the old days, where on Wednesday we could plan the showings for Saturday and we would
Right.
leisurely meet for coffee and here's
Yes.
your coffee and how are you? And instead it's
Right.
now get in the car, get the papers,
You're
let's
going
go.
now.
you know and so
Exactly.
it's funny when I started in real estate in New York City, my broker would always tell me, he said, Kevin, I know when you got a deal because you leave on the train, you come back in a cab.
Yeah. I
Because we're
like.
hurrying, we're trying to get there first. So it really is that, what is your process? A lot of the clients that I talk to, it really is giving more reassurance, giving more background knowledge of your client, not necessarily the letter of why they want to live there, but
Don't do that.
don't do
We
that.
thought about
Right.
that on real estate.
Yeah.
Do not.
Right. But yeah, it's not wise. But what I only do transactions for myself these days. And the most recent transaction that my wife and I did, the buyer's agent sent me a letter. It was an investor group. So the letter came that said, I've done 40 deals with these folks. Here's the proof of funds. They're legit. They make it really. So it really reassured me that this was, that he's got experience with these
Right.
folks. It was going to be an easy process, so to speak, and all that. And then, of course, as you know, cash full ass did not hurt either.
Oh,
So,
that
so,
never hurts.
Yeah. So you really want to look at your process instead of just sending the bare minimum. You really want to say, what questions might the seller agent or the seller have? Can
Mhm.
I answer that on the front end?
Right.
Right.
But
So
that's
that,
even like, yeah, I mean, that's for everyone, like answering
yeah,
questions before they're asked because we know. But I mean, even what you're saying, adjusting the schedule, it's like I'm calling it like buyer fatigue. You know, it's
yeah,
like we have to understand that each part of the process is like exponentially longer
right.
than if you were taking listings, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you remember 2008?
Do I remember? Yes, that's when I got into business.
Yeah, I remember 2008. That's when I went out of business for
Oh.
the first time. Right.
Mhm.
So 2008 was very tough. If you're new to the game, that's the market crashed basically overnight for some of us. It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So what happened in 2008 is some people their business died and went away, and some people adjusted and persevered. The people that persevered said, "I've got to change the volume in which I do things."
Right.
Meaning, if you were making 50 calls a day and doing a great business in 2008, you needed to make 100 calls a day to do the same
At
business,
least. Yeah, or
at least.
150. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So your process has to be malleable in a sense that if you want the same outcome, meaning the same revenue, the same GCI,
Mhm.
you have to change the volume of which you're doing things if they're working. If you're
Well,
working with
and that's
mostly
kind of how
sellers,
it already has been, right? Because like if we like what I'm a cold caller, and so it was like, yeah, I could be four as long as I talk to 30 people, I could set
right?
to appointments to get like one or two of those, right?
Yeah.
But then, I mean, this was a few years ago because people weren't picking up their phone and like all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, if I'm going to call, now I need to call a lot more people to
Mhm.
get my 30, and it takes more time.
Yep.
Or I need to be like, how else can I get a hold of people? And then it's like, okay, social media. But then that
Right.
also takes time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you look at once you start doing that. So when I was cold calling probably 3 hours a day at one point, and so I'm looking at metrics all day long, and
Yeah.
so I was making calls, but then I realized, hey, my response rate on text is 82%. My response rate on phone calls is about 38%.
So let me text.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you still have to call at some point. So it was adding one more step in my process of I'm going to shoot a text. When I get the response, we've now started a conversation.
Right.
There will be a very clear
Exactly.
point that I take them over to phone call. So my process just changed to adjust to how people behave.
Right.
Right. So
That's
you're
an
seeing the
interesting
same thing
thing. I
now.
think that's like something that we can all look at like in our life, right?
Yeah.
Because if something is not like smooth, because ask yourself, like, has something shifted? Is it different? Like, if it was smooth before, it can be smooth again, but like, what do I need to do? Or am I just going to sink with this ship? Either one
Exactly.
is fine, but like, what do you really want?
Exactly. And that goes back to everything we're talking about. Nothing stands on its own. Control, schedule, focus, all
Yeah.
of those things work in conjunction with each other. So
Mhm.
if you're filling your schedule of things you don't control and that you shouldn't be focused on,
Right.
you're going to be exhausted. You're going to burn out, right?
Right.
Because you're
Exactly.
not getting the results. So
Yeah.
there is an element of saying I need to fill my schedule with things that have positive ROI, that get the results. It may be that I need to do more of this thing and less of this thing over here. I use social media all the time. I'm like, if you can't track any revenue back to social media, you're not good at it enough yet to use it as a revenue source.
Right.
So you've got to double load on the things that do work, and
Mhm.
that's your schedule piece. If you're still doing 2 hours of social media a day and you can't track it back to any revenue, you need to adjust that in times like this where you're saying, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to contact more FISBOs or more buyers or whatever
Right.
your process is. That makes more sense. So all of that works in conjunction with one another
Right.
of controlling the things you control, focusing on the things that are positive ROI, and filling your schedule, doubling down on those things instead of filling it with maybes or might works or hope one day to work. It is saying, I know this works. I can prove it. So I
Yep.
need to do that for 2 hours instead of one now.
Mhm.
And I'm going to see what that does and constantly assess how much traction you're getting. And that's how you mitigate the exhaustion factor, because what is the burnout factor? What is it? Why do we feel burnout? Right.
Yeah.
It's when we're max effort, no result.
Yes.
Oh,
Because when you're max effort and high results, you feel
oh,
energetic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Show me the money. If I'm getting that check, I'll put up with some more
I
stuff.
will do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that when you understand that and you understand why we're fatigued, why we're so tired, exhausted, burnout, it's because we're doing the same thing and it's not working now because of things we don't control have changed. And if we
Exactly.
keep doing that, that's
We're
what'll
gonna
create
hold
it.
on to something that doesn't exist, like
Yeah.
living in some fantasy land, like
Yeah.
live in freaking reality, man.
Yeah. It's like disco. So many people were hoping disco would stick around through the 80s. Hey, well, come on, please. I loved it. And then they were, please come back. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm showing my age, but but that you don't want to hold on to disco too tight because there's something else coming, right? And so
Right.
if you use that in our business, it's like, you might be holding on to, and real estate is probably the industry where people are still operating on a 1990s model of business
Oh
for
my
by
God.
and large. And
Yeah.
so we have to evolve past that. So the people that will be burnt out, the people that feel stress, fatigue, they're the people who say, I'm going to keep doing the same thing and hope the market comes back to where I am
Yeah,
instead of
that's not
evolving
gonna
where it's
happen.
going.
It's not. But
I
this
know.
is exactly why we all need at least one coach, right? Because
Oh yeah.
coaches like, I mean, our coach can see outside of what we're doing because we get so like as an agent, I'm so trapped in like my day-to-day stuff. And I need like somebody like you to be like, okay, look, I've got 5 of my clients going through this or 10 of them. What's going on here? And like you can see stuff that like I can't see, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So,
why I have two coaches myself for that
oh
very
yeah,
reason.
I mean, I've got three.
Oh, you win.
I need like a lot more. I feel like
Yeah.
all of them are like specialized in something. You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
So you do coach and you have a
Yeah.
mastermind. Tell us a little bit about that because even in just these few minutes, it's like so many ahas. You're just pulling like the stuff that makes sense that we don't have time to think about, you know? And it gives you
Yeah.
so much more freedom when you understand what's happening. You can make a choice.
It does. It does. And I was talking with one of my clients today. She's in real estate, solo agent, but does, she does, I think about 8 million a year
Good.
volume, which is a good business,
Nice.
and so, and we were talking about what we're seeing in the market. And she says, I'm seeing people struggling. And she's like, things aren't that hard for me right
Right.
now. She's
Right.
closing 5 or 7 deals a month,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
You must be
And
in the
she's like,
Midwest.
she is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she's like, things just aren't that hard for me. And I'm just really not struggling through the buyer's offers. And a lot of it has to do with their mindset,
Absolutely.
and things like that. So really, like, my mastermind is for brokers, franchise owners, leaders, team leaders, and high level agents.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we really work through is keeping our head where the money is
Yeah.
and not letting our head wander with the next shiny object, or the, hey, you might need to get a new CRM. Yeah, that's a great idea. You know, so we really stay focused on the activities that generate revenue, and we dismiss everything else.
Yeah, I love it.
So it is kind of putting ourselves not in a bubble, but we're putting bookends on what we're willing to do and what we're gonna do,
Yeah.
and everything in the middle is proven to be an ROI. If we do that, then there's extra time to experiment, and we can do that and all day long.
Yeah.
But the revenue shows up when we really focus in on those things we know works and message it in a way. One of the things we talked about today was you need to be talking 90 days ahead of what everyone else is saying,
Yes. Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? What does that feel like? And that's how you really create the next wave of
Well, and
business
when you're in a
leadership.
mastermind with other people too from like around the country, you can see things that other people can't, that other people
Yeah.
like in your sandbox won't be able to see because they only
Yeah.
talk to the people in their office or they only talk to like their one other realtor friend. So,
Right. Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. But however, they do that, but then they go to Instagram and they compare themselves to everybody who's out there having this wonderful life. And it's just it's a powder keg of detriment that comes
This is a
upon you. And
whole
so,
other podcast,
whole
Kevin.
nother podcast. Yeah. So, but that's really it. I think the three pieces that I really, I really work around: to control what you control,
Mhm.
keep focus on the things that need focus, meaning the things that work,
Yeah.
the things that work for you, and then constantly monitor your schedule. The schedule's not there to, box you in. Your schedule's there to free you, to
Right.
get you the results you need, because then you won't feel the burnout, then you won't feel the
Right.
exhaustion.
Exactly.
And that really is it. It really
No, I
is.
love it. So if people want to find out more information about the mastermind or they want to contact you, what
Mhm.
is the best way?
Email is always best. That way we can just cut to the chase. Kevin@kevinhoover.org. You can go to kevinhoover.org and check out my website, which, it's like any other website. But really, if you're real serious about it, just email me and say, let's get on a call and have a conversation.
Yeah.
I don't take everybody. We keep about 7 or 10 people in that mastermind
Okay.
on purpose. It's all high level people. There are a couple other options for you if you really, I have other groups of coaching and options, but that really is that's the one that really drives the industry, the real estate industry in my world, is getting those high level people,
Yeah.
taking your team from 10 people to 100 people, if
Yeah.
that's what you want, taking your business from, you know, 500,000 GCI to 1 million GCI, or sometimes it's from 0 to 100,000, you know, whatever
Right.
it is you need. Yeah.
It just depends. Well, I appreciate it. So, kevinhoover.org, you said, not .com, .org.
Yeah. .org.
Right. Do you have 2 seconds to share a little bit about your backstory?
Oh yeah.
Why it's
So
.org?
yeah, well, it's .org because my last name's Hoover, and all the Hoovers were very expensive because of somebody made a vacuum cleaner, right?
Yes.
So it's .org for that. But really, I'm in an RV. My family and I live in an RV, a 41-foot fifth wheel, and we travel the country helping kids who are fighting cancer. And so we're in North Carolina right now. We're headed back to South Carolina next week, and then we'll head north up through Michigan in the fall. But I run my business from the road and from this little office, and that's what I do. So I get to meet a lot of people. I get to see a lot of different parts of the country, but I also get to practice what I preach as far as running a high level business and enjoying my life and helping other people. Like for me, that's the trifecta.
That's
If
awesome.
you can do that, you've won life.
No, exactly. I think it's great. Well, I really appreciate you being on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.